Present.
Allie. Allie, I see you. Okay.
I raised my
Casey.
hand, kind of.
Casey is
Here.
here. David.
Here.
Chris.
Here.
Adrian is absent. Aaron. Don't see Aaron. Sabrina is absent. Swen. Here. Matt.
Present.
Patty.
Here.
Bill is absent. Allison.
Present.
You and Jessica. Oh, here. Oh, wait, I see you.
Present. Hi.
Got it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. We do have quorum. Moving on to public comments. Looks like we have, please let me know if I'm saying your name. Is it Anika? Annika, please come on up and have a seat. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead and say your piece. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, so yeah, I'm Annika. I'm here with Portland Bike Polo, a nonprofit, and we play at Alberta Park. I moved to Portland 2 years ago. I knew one person, and I guess like a year later, I showed up to polo and didn't know anybody again, and now just like wanted to, I don't know, come in and tell my story of how much stoke I have for Portland Bike Polo, and it wouldn't happen without the courts, of course, and the park and you all, and so just really coming in to see what all happens here and remind you all that we're at Alberta Park every Sunday, and I know we're like in conversation in general about courts and facilities, and so just here to advocate for the community and. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead. I'll allow it.
What court size do you need? How many, 5-on-5, 6-on-6?
It's 3-on-3, yeah, so the court size that we have. I'll be able to speak better.
The courts are a little bit small to host an actual qualifying tournament. And so it's often held in Seattle because they have the right size. The courts at Alberta Park are roughly 20 feet both ways, too short.
So what are the correct dimensions?
I believe it's 140 by 80, something like that. And the courts here are about 120 by 60.
Is Alberta the only park that has the polo courts?
Yeah, because they have boards
Yeah.
at the bottom of them, so, yeah. And we play, I mean, we have some of the best players in the world, maybe not surprising. It's like on the intro to Portlandia, it's like bike polo. And so like just in the summer, we'll play 4 days a week. We'll play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But in the winter, there's like no lights and it's not covered. So we drive down to Eugene. They play like underneath I-5 or 105. So yeah, we just feel like really limited, and we could like really grow. Bike polo is so fun because like all these different cities have clubs, and then you get to like travel and go meet people in other communities, and like we're hosting a tournament here at the beginning of April. So yeah, just great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask another question really quick?
Yeah, please.
Tell her what you do.
Yes. So I'm Marty Stockton. I'm a senior parks planner, and I'm kind of assigned to the west side of the river. And we're working on some very early thinking about Tom McCall Waterfront Park. And obviously we have bridges that cross the park. And you were mentioning under the bridge in Eugene, and I'm just curious to if you had a paved surface, what kind of retrofits would you need to have a proper court?
I mean, I think just some sort of way to have boards around it and
So the ball doesn't.
yeah, and we
End up
can
in the
be
river.
really creative with that, like, I think in Eugene, I don't know what those boards are that like they pull out, but, and then lights. It'd be nice, but they also have basketball goals underneath there, and then they'll get like a permit for it. Well, thank you.
You have a website?
Well, we have their
Yes.
emails if we want to,
And
Contact us.
we'll follow up, yeah,
Great.
we'll be around too.
great, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And Michael, would you like to join us?
Sure.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Michael Hernandez. I've been playing bike polo in Portland for about 10 years now. I've traveled all over the world and played in tournaments and met some really amazing people. They've shown me their city. They've also come to our city and we get to show them how cool our city is. And to speak a little bit more to your question about the courts, I think what Portland Bike Polo would need is something, one of the big things is safety, obviously, and so having boards that are probably around 4 feet high so that you're not, crashing your bike over the board or anything like that. Crashes don't happen very often, but they still do happen. So just the safety aspect, I think, would be really a big concern. The other is like having a good court surface. And there are clubs, the club in San Francisco has a really good surface. I can find out what that surface is, and if that's a possibility. And then obviously, like she said, the lights would be really ideal. The other thing with Eugene that we noticed recently was they had some heavy rains during a tournament that we went down there. And during the heavy rains, there are some holes in the freeway that water was leaking through. And so, I don't know if that is part of parks or if that's ODOT or PDOT or whatever, but stuff like that is something
We
to,
all have a lot of bridges.
yeah. So, but yeah, I'm just happy to be here and nice to meet you all. And
Question, is there a court sport that works very well with the proportion dimension of bike polo that you did there, so that when you guys are not playing, some of the sport can actually use that court?
Yeah, that's a good question. The Alberta Park is a decommissioned tennis court, and I don't know if that was a regulation size tennis court or if it was, something that was just, maybe built before that was considered. But yeah, other than that, I think a lot of, I think having a fenced in dog park area is, I know it's not a sport, but it's, some way to share the court. So yeah, because yeah, we do share with other sports. Oh, foot hockey is another sport. They have the courts on Saturdays. And we have a working relationship with them when they have their tournaments in the as well.
And I have a question.
Sure.
What about spectators? Do they need seating?
Yeah, at Alberta Park for some of the bigger tournaments, not only spectators but players too, having bleachers. There are some small bleachers at Alberta Park that are really nice and helpful to have. But yeah, having some sort of bleachers or some place to sit and spectate is, yeah, another.
About how many people show up usually to watch?
The cap for the upcoming tournament in April is 60 people, and that's gonna be people from all over the country. And then a lot of those people bring their families. So like partners and kids. And so, that's, that's probably, 75 people or so that are just there to spectate and hang out.
Great, well, thank you so much. We gave you a little bit more time because
Appreciate
it's only
that.
10 of you, but thank you.
Sundays, we'll have like 20 people,
Okay.
so. you
What
also
time?
come and play bike polo.
Usually
around
from like
noon.
noon till sundown.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
us. We're gonna move forward to general announcements. General announcements. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Go ahead and move towards the approving, is it November meeting minutes? Or
January?
January. I see November, maybe.
Oh, sorry, that might have.
Yeah, okay, January meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve? Approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussions? All those in favor, oh, Celine, go
I
ahead.
have a question. The letter that is drafted for PSAF. There's no, who drafted it? There's no like,
We'll get to that in a
oh,
minute.
okay,
That's not part of the minutes, so.
sorry.
No worries.
Okay, sorry.
All those to approve of minutes, please raise your hand. Right,
Great.
let me know.
I believe, Matt, you were absent
Yeah,
last month, so I will have his vote abstained.
Okay, are there any other abstentions? Anybody against approving the minutes? Are we all good, Michelle?
We are good.
Thank you so much. Director's report, Director Long.
All right, I have quite a few items. So January 1st was a big milestone as far as the government transition is concerned, but that was not the end by a long shot. It's been a whirlwind ever since then. And now that the city is entering the next phase of its transition to this new form of government and organizational structure, we are also facing down simultaneously a $100 million budget gap. So as such, and not surprisingly, the city leadership is exploring ways to streamline core services and ensure the most effective use of resources. It was a part of the plan to begin with, but I think there's a sense of urgency now with this budget gap. So this year they will be resetting citywide strategies and staffing models for some centralized areas, procurement, human resources, technology, budget, and business operations, communications, engagement, and equity. They've begun work already in some areas and include subject matter experts that are being engaged in the process, including in our service area. In many cases, this reset will result in elevating these functions to the service area level rather than the bureau level. So it may mean moving positions across service areas, bureaus, and programs. Another concept that is under consideration is the dissolution of the Vibrant Community Service Area and the reassignment of Vibrant Community Bureaus and offices to other service areas. I sent an email to the board about this on Friday. This concept will be included along with other ideas in a package of budget options that City Administrator Jordan will release at the end of February for community feedback. And as you know, Mayor Wilson will propose a balanced budget in early May, and City Council will amend and approve a budget in June. We'll be talking a little bit more about the budget in a minute. So just want to note that we always knew that there was a possibility that this incoming council and city leaders would refine the organizational model that we all worked really hard to design last year. So, and like I said earlier, now that process is really being informed by the budget. There's not really a lot more detail beyond what I've shared, but I just wanted the board to know that these changes are either in process or planned, and we will continue to keep you apprised, especially as it relates to the dissolution of the service area. I'm going to pause for a moment because I imagine there might be some questions.
And if I can remind the board to either raise your hand or tip your name card to the side so I can call on you. If you have any questions? Matt, please go ahead.
Thanks for that. So is the dissolution more, or potential dissolution, more a function of budgetary issues or the new council having a different perspective in the prior council, or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. I think they feel that having 6 service areas is a bit heavy. And vibrant communities, I mean, we make up 85% of vibrant communities, whereas every other service area has many more larger bureaus. And so I imagine that it was a little bit of both.
I guess just a comment to say that it's likely not easy and probably frustrating. And just having sat through some of that, like all of that, like then to have to revisit that, I need to scratch my head a bit.
Yeah, it's challenging. We've been in a moment of change since I got here 6 years ago. Like it's just been churning. So, and it's hard not to sort of become numb. But, you know, we're trying really hard to support our staff and be as transparent and communicative as we can. And, you know, I think there's just a lot of confusion. I mean, they're literally building the plane as you fly it. It could not be more apt right now. So thank you for that, though.
I have Ally on screen.
Go ahead, Ally.
Yeah, I want to echo Matt and say I'm sorry for all the upheaval. And I wanted to ask, have they said anything about where Parks would live? Or is that just, they've just said more like how to dismantle, they haven't talked about rebuild?
Yeah, they've only talked about the potential dissolution, but I will say that when we were doing this work last year and doing a lot of retreats and a lot of feedback opportunities, there was for a moment in time when Parks was included in the Public Works service area as a potential fit. So I'd imagine that that's an area that they're going to be considering. There's a lot of overlap and connectivity with the bureaus that are currently in Public Works.
I want to jump in really quickly just to speak to what does the morale look like amongst staff right now? And if I can couple that with a second question, what lessons were learned from the first go around that's going to be implemented or used in some sort of way that staff can know that, you know, their time wasn't wasted in the process, and can that be communicated?
So to your first question, I think the morale varies based on the staff person and their work group. The managers and supervisors are a little bit closer to the conversation. So I'd imagine that staff who are in the field, who are, you know, head down and, you know, their ecosystem of work and what they do hasn't changed much. So I think it varies. I would say that because the dissolution of the service area is only conceptual at this point, I don't think it's really hit home, I guess. So we don't really know what it's going to look like, although we do know that it will include streamlining of the support services and the centralized services that we offer. And so that's challenging conversation that we're having. And I even to your second part of the question, I think time will tell, right? I mean, the best we can do is, like I said, continue to be supportive and transparent and communicative as best as possible, because there's a lot of unknowns. Even now, right? Like I'm talking about, I'm like, I don't know, but we'll continue to be open and honest and as timely as we can be with information.
Thank you.
You have anything to add?
Okay. Thank you. It looks like we have
Chris.
Oh, Chris, please go ahead.
This may be a question that you don't have an answer to, and we won't know until later February and early March, but what is the main driver of this reconsideration? Are there is there a large budget savings to be had from the dissolution of this one service area in terms of the shared service and administrative costs for another service area, and that's why it's a consideration? Or is it for just different integration with shared services across administration? I guess that's just a question that I've been thinking about this weekend after getting the news.
I really couldn't put a figure to that question. But it would remove some offices that currently exist to support the service area. And I guess we'll know more as we work through it.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions on that topic, I'll move to levy. So levy update, I sent an email. I'm not sure if folks saw it, but there was an Oregonian story on February 4th that the city council president will not be taking up the Parks levy referral this May, but will defer a proposed ballot measure to a later date. The quote that we pulled from the story was, the Parks levy is imperative to supporting the park system from swim classes to basketball courts. She said, placing the Parks levy on the November ballot will allow the council and the community more time to thoughtfully consider how we continue supporting a park system that meets Portlanders' needs. As you know, we're working with some partners, the Portland Parks Foundation and the Intertwine Alliance, who are interested in supporting options for the Parks levy future. And we've been in discussions with them, and they've been in discussions among themselves. And I'm sure we'll hear more from Jessica when she gets to her update. Relatedly, the Parks Local Option Levy Year 3 annual report and the levy oversight annual report was presented at council and unanimously approved by council on January 15th. So we have had some good face time showing the council how integral this resource is for our work, and we'll continue working with you all. I know that a letter was penned, and so we'll need to have a conversation about your approach. I don't think it's too early to do that outreach, even though we're talking about November, because there's a lot of people who we want to educate.
If I can dovetail to that.
Sure.
So the ad hoc committee that's working on the levy letter, and I want to thank Chris as well as Casey for generating the letter, and it looks like we're going to meet sometime next week to speak strategy. So there is still space on the ad hoc committee if folks are interested in joining us, or if you have any suggestions, please send them our way.
Moving on to budget, as I mentioned, the city administrator's budget is set to come out on February 27th now, 28th-ish, on or about
one of those
February
days.
28th.
Yeah.
Certainly not after February 28th, because it has to be within February. And then the mayor's budget is set to come out on or about May 1st. We are having a lot of conversations about what parks and recreations reductions are going to have to be in the fiscal year 25-26. And also in the out years, we are looking at around 23 million in 25-26, and it will increase in 25-26, and it'll increase in 26-27. And we've got different levy scenarios that Todd and Sarah Huggins have been working on, but we're looking at about 25% of Portland Parks and Recreation's current budget. So it's pretty dire. So we will be meeting with the Financial Sustainability Working Group on the 20th, and we'll be walking through the current projections and what those scenarios look like. I'll pause there. I have one more item, but I want to also pause for a moment. Yep.
So it might be controversial, which I'm okay with. Has there been any thought about turning over certain managed properties by Parks and Recreation to other bureaus or other, like, for instance, I'm thinking about the public schools, for them to manage their own properties?
So it's not as controversial as you would think. In 2019, when we were faced with a bit of a cliff, we actually did find operators for some of our neighborhood community centers. So Hillside, Fulton, Selwood, we're no longer managing those. So it's not crazy.
Okay.
I can't imagine that PPS would be interested given their financial situation. But it's certainly something that we'll keep in mind if we get to the point where we need to do any closing of any facilities, which is on the list of potential reductions, so.
And as the budget conversation continues, can you inform us more of some of the strategies that you're thinking of? Thank you.
Sure.
This is timing is really you know, eclipsed with what's going on federal level. Whatever we need to kind of move decisions forward or discussion, it would be really great to have as transparent as possible in terms of consideration, dialogue, and because knowing, especially at parks, there's so many staff members who's been with parks for so many years. It's a big family, and it will be, I think everybody understands the difficulties and hard decisions, but the adjustment would be really great to be able to have a more holistic kind of understanding, so that it's not so heartless on the federal level. We do not want to see doors closed and people say, where's my job? I think that's just inhumane.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we have, whenever we get into the budget process, one of the things is, so the Financial Sustainability Working Group serves as our budget advisory committee, right? So that is one of the ways that we work through and try to be transparent about where we're at in our process. The other piece is that we develop a communications plan so that we are communicating with staff as early as we possibly can. It's challenging. Too early causes, frantic, unnecessary anxiety, and too late is also not good. So we try to balance all that. We usually have an all employee gathering meeting around budget time where we talk about the budget. And then if there's any sensitive conversations that need to happen, those happen more on a one-on-one basis.
Thank you. Do we have any virtual hands?
Jessica had her hand up. Jessica, I don't know if you wanted to say something.
My question was answered.
Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the last thing that I wanted to talk about, Dr. Corbin identified this as an area of interest, and that was around sanctuary city status. So on January 21st, Mayor Wilson addressed the City Council highlighting concerns about the new federal administration's immigration enforcement plans. He emphasized Portland's commitment to its sanctuary city status and called on city councilors to support the community by sharing resources, encouraging legal aid, and fostering understanding of immigrant rights. And he urged collaboration with local organizations to protect undocumented families. Despite potential federal consequences, Wilson reaffirmed the city's dedication to standing with its immigrant residents and upholding the city's values of freedom from fear and sanctuary from federal overreach. Following that, City Administrator Jordan shared a one-pager with all staff on how to interact with federal immigration agents. That guide and also a guide in addition to that one-pager has been prepared and shared with staff. In particular of note is at our community centers, preschools, community gardens, where our staff interact with folks all the time. And it's helpful for them to have resources at the ready should a community member need it. So I'll put some of the links in the chat when I'm done with my report.
Thank you. And if I can ask a question regarding that.
Sure.
So we won't expect any sort of language injustice to start moving forward. We're gonna move forward how we always have,
As far as
not restrict language or what have you to just English or.
we have
Moves.
not received any indication that that was even being considered.
Okay, and it's supported by also Governor. Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
with the understanding that Oregon is a sanctuary state as well?
I believe that we're suing the federal government right now, so yeah.
Thank you for that update. I think that's just so important for community
else?
members to hear that when they're trying to recreate and receive the benefits for Parks and Recreation, that they can actually do that
Sure.
in peace, so to speak. It looks like we have a.
Casey on the screen.
Casey, go
Just
ahead.
a question is something I really should know. How much, if any, federal funding does the city get?
We get quite a bit of federal funding, but it's mostly through grant programs and not necessarily recurring funds. And I don't think anything has stopped right now.
No.
So any federal funds that have been allocated to us or awarded to us seem to still be flowing. We do have some other concerns around the tariffs and in particular around steel and some of our capital projects and how that might impact them.
There's a lot of different ways that accepting federal funding can impact us in the coming years, I'm afraid.
That is true.
Yeah, and I'm just, do you have any idea, sort of for this year's budget, what percentage is related to federal funding?
I do not, but we
Okay.
could make an inquiry. I'm sure somebody's been asked that question and somebody's answered that question for somebody else. We can ask our Office of Government Relations. They might know.
And I think for the parks exposure, we have an energy efficiency grant, we have some school lunch program dollars, and we have an environmental education grant. So like our financial exposure is pretty limited compared to the size of our budget.
And unfortunately, the federal government has been reducing its money to the states since the late 70s, 80s. So in some ways, we're kind of used to the federal government not contributing as much as we probably would like them to.
I would say also that our free lunch and play program will probably be impacted, not just because of the federal funding, but PPS is not funding it at the same level. So they're, it's all sort of connected, but.
And none of the funding or grants that you've received has been rescinded.
Not at
So
this
far.
point, no.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions from the board?
My last thing that I just wanted to mention, and I think Suen alluded to it, I included in the packet an executive summary about the Blue Green Deal, which is a proposal that is being developed to go to PSEF. Because it's still in formation, I didn't send the full proposal or budget, but I wanted the board to have a sense of what's being proposed. Laura Lehman is on the call with us for the next 13 minutes. She told me she has to leave at 5:50. I told her I would get to the topic. If there's any questions, I should just add, and I don't think the executive summary mentioned this, there's multi-parts to the proposal. So it is possible that PSEF may be interested in one or more parts of the proposal. And the staff will be meeting with PSEF staff and I think committee members over the next 2 weeks to sort of vet the proposal before it actually gets submitted for approval.
When is the submission date?
Laura, what is the submittal date? I know the meeting, there's a meeting tomorrow and on the 20th, and we're looking to submit it in March, correct?
Right, I think we'll have to, so this week on Thursday and Friday are small group meetings with like subsets of the PSEF committee. But I think for the full PSEF committee meeting is next Thursday, the 20th, and they want to see materials a week ahead of time. So I think we'll submit those materials and I think they'll be available on their website prior to next Thursday. They're just not quite finished yet.
Could you send a link or an email to the board when it's up and ready for review?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Matt, go ahead.
What's the expected award or decision date on that, and is there any opportunity to bridge any of the budgetary gap with that?
Do you know when the Laura, do you know when they're looking to do awardees? This is off cycle, so I don't know if it would necessarily be on the website.
Yeah, what we've been told is that, so we expect them to discuss it at the February 20th PSEF committee meeting, have some discussion, and then come back for the March 20th meeting, and hopefully get a decision from the committee at that time. And then my understanding of what we expect from the process is that then it would go and become folded into the budget and be approved, final approval through the budget process, is my understanding.
And to the second part of your question, that for the components that would benefit parks, the idea was that it would be additive. And the largest pieces would be, and tell me if, Laura, if I get this right or wrong, natural area, land acquisition, restoration, wildfire mitigation.
Those
Is
are
that
the
it?
biggest pieces,
Those are
yeah.
the biggest pieces.
And then maybe of interest to this group, there's also a piece to move forward some of the work plan items from the Natural Resource Service Delivery Work Plan. So that's not only PPNR, but it's definitely related.
So all additive, not budget gap filling.
Not Vegas cruises though.
Not Vegas cruises.
Any other questions?
Just a short one. I understand there's so many moving parts, moving pieces, and we can't really work like a paralyzed because of the unknowns, but the piece of what I'm looking for also is not related to any federal funding or anything like that. So it's kind of protected.
Oh, it's, yeah.
Okay.
So city,
City of Portland income
Taxes.
tax, gross income tax.
it's
one
protected
nice
and,
thing.
yeah, it is a nice thing. It is a
One nice
silver
thing.
lining.
I think it's on any company that has over 500 million in revenue. That's not like a hospital or food or anything like that. It's strictly companies.
Ally was on the committee that helped form.
I was on I'm part of one of the organizations that was one of the people who put it forward.
All right.
I helped with comms.
She knows what she's talking about.
Thank you, Ally.
You're an insider.
All right,
All right.
any other questions? I have one regarding something in the report.
Okay.
Of a $200,000 grant that's going for shuttle to connect communities to parks. My question is, how long could that, if and when, let's say when the money gets granted, how long would that shuttle be in service for based on?
I do not know that off the top of my head, and I don't think that we have anyone from Lands here. that can speak
Mike
to it.
Grosso.
But I don't
is
know,
here.
Mike Grasso, you don't know the answer to that. That's a Liv Brumfield.
You're
grant
asking about
proposal.
the.
Yeah, I'm
I have a-
unfamiliar.
Okay,
Just the
I have a
duration.
one pager that I can send to the Parks Board that gives a little bit more information.
Thank you. I love that, and I hope
With the
we
wind.
do more connection through public transportation, but
Yeah.
the shuttle's a great idea. I really appreciate that. I just wanted to center that or bring it forward.
And for
Anything-
folks who didn't read it, it's just a grant proposal for state transportation funding whereby we would run shuttles from areas in East Portland and other areas that, you know, aren't getting out to Forest Park and bringing them to Forest Park for activities.
As well as Washington Park, I believe?
Yes, as well as Washington Park. We're partnering with Explore Washington Park.
So thank you. Just checking our time. We're about 3 minutes behind, but I think we can make it
We'll
up
make up for it.
with the working group. So thank you so much, Director Long. So moving towards the working groups, Board Affairs Working Group, is there anything to report?
Just what's been written. I'll answer any questions.
Any questions by the board or? Thank you so much, Casey. Land use and infrastructure. Anything to report in? Or are there any questions from the board? Great, thank you so much, land use and infrastructure. Financial sustainability, Casey again.
Yeah, I actually just want to highlight two things. One is that I did put in the report a link to a map that has a list of all the assets of parks throughout the city. It's very good. I would encourage everybody to at least play with it a little bit. And it discusses if the assets are at risk or not. And the other thing is I've added to the report the list that Sarah and her group put together about closures and partnership operations and also assets that are subject to risk of closure. That is also worth looking at.
Thank you so much, Casey. Any questions from the board? Great. Community Engagement Working Group did not meet in January, but we have a letter started. And we're gonna be moving forward with that this month. And then the nomination committee. Casey again.
I'm sorry, although I should let Michelle talk, but I just want to thank in advance Chris and Sue Ann and Bill for agreeing to be on the nominating committee this year.
And how many spaces or seats do we have to fill for?
Well,
possible
I'm
board
filling
member?
it. We have none actually, unless people, but obviously we'll take more. But I think,
How many seats are we gonna?
Oh,
are
to
we
fill?
For the nominee, how many seats are we trying to fill for the
I
new
think we've got
board?
4.
4, okay.
Mhm.
So
I'll confirm with Michelle, but
I
I think we
believe
got
it's
4.
5
Oh,
seats,
only
actually.
5.
Oh.
five open seats, and we might be doing it staggering
No, we're gonna go all at once.
all
I
at
think.
once, okay.
Yes.
And when is it?
So the terms will start for everyone in July, at the beginning of the fiscal year. We just wanted to take some time to kind of promote the nominating committee, but it sounds like we have all the spots filled, so I might not need to promote it anymore. But Casey, do you mind listing who is in the nominating committee one more time?
So it's me, Chris, Sue Ann, and Bill.
Have you established a chair?
No, but I'm sure Chris will agree.
Sounds like there's some conversations that still need to be had. Thank you so much for doing the work, folks.
And I want,
Appreciate
and I do want everybody to start thinking about their networks because we're going to be asking you to ask everybody else if they can be on the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Along
just to give a brief timeline of the nominating committee. We're hoping to schedule the first meeting March 1st for the nominating committee. Likely the listing for the board will come out sometime in mid to late March, and that listing will be open for a month. Everyone is encouraged to apply. We are trying to reach folks with different areas of expertise, as well as different district residents. If you look at our roster, our district is very District 2 and District 4 heavy. So folks that live in District 1 and 3 will definitely want to highlight those applicants. And again, 5 appointments, which we haven't had that high of a number since, I believe, 2020.
When I started, I think
Correct.
it was like me, Sabrina, Ally.
Yeah.
Nova, maybe one more.
Yeah, so it's not a super daunting task, and I'm confident that we'll have a lot of applicants enough to really fill those spots.
We usually have members moved up to the city council, so.
Yeah.
They graduated.
Yeah.
Right. As well, another thing to consider that I'm gonna be stepping down in May as the chair, so we're looking for a chair and a co-chair, or a chair and a vice chair. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, or if you wanna nominate somebody.
Which we know Casey's very good at. Casey's just like telling people.
All right, well, thank you so much. I'm gonna move forward to the Portland Parks Foundation.
Oh, wait, Corbin, can I jump in on the nature and rec?
Yes, please, go ahead, Ally.
So the goal is to, it's right now, right, Corbin, me, Allison and Bill, and we haven't met yet. There's been discussion or waiting to have discussion on what exactly we want to do with that working group. So I'm gonna send out a doodle so that we can all meet for the first time to just even discuss a big picture of what this working group is gonna look like, and then come together with staff to have that conversation on sort of more broadly. So I hope to have more to share at our next board meeting on how this will shape.
Thank you so much, Ally, and there's room if you want to join, so please let us know. All right, Portland Parks Foundation, Jessica Green, you have the floor.
Wonderful. Well, I will make one correction in the notes, I guess. Our George Park project is a little bit on hold as we work through some partnership questions. But in the packet, it said we have a community engagement meeting on February 27th. And I know all of you are planning to go, but cancel that. We are rescheduling that meeting. So I just want to make sure that was caught. And then I also just wanted to flag that things are actually moving along in the elk world. I know there was a coin article today that just decided to highlight that it's not coming back until the end. That's been the plan, or end of this year. That has been the schedule for a very long time. And things are going well in that department. We're actually selecting the stones tomorrow at the contract place, so that's exciting. We have the sample stones in from the original quarry. And I will also, the biggest piece today, just to update on, is progress with the levy. As Director Long said, we've been in conversation with the city through Todd and Director Long and Vibrant Communities. But after the confirmation from council that they were looking more for a November referral, the Intertwine Alliance and ourselves and the city are convening just for next steps and how to actually put together a strategic process to get the referral on the November ballot and what that looks like. Something that is new is we're hoping to work with the mayor's office as well on next steps. And so we are just taking this as an opportunity to really form a coalition behind the levy renewal, think strategically about what that looks like, address the concerns such as tax increases and the capital maintenance backlog that isn't necessarily addressed within the levy. So we are Noah Siegel, who's on Intertwine Alliance's board, is also very involved in campaign work. And so he's supporting kind of the next steps on developing sort of some education around the renewal process. As that evolves over the next month, there's definitely opportunity if people on this board want to get more involved in putting together what a levy referral would look like. I know we talked last meeting about conversations with the counselors. I think that there's sort of two conversations to be had. I think it's great for the Parks Board to approach counselors, but we've been talking about Portland Parks Foundation, Intertwine Alliance, and our strategy in terms of the levy and introducing ourselves separate from the Parks Board. And I think it's great to have two fronts having conversations with them. Interestingly, I have participated in two community-led parks tours with District 1 counselors and District 4 counselors by a group of parks advocates called the Portland Parks Alliance. And they have been putting together parks tours within their districts and the counselors and been hosting conversations with them. And so that has also been interesting to listen in on those and listen to the way the counselors are working together. At the District 4 one, I will note that they were telling community members to definitely come talk to them, also to think about how there are different counselors in charge of different areas of work. Even there's 3 of them, I think, assigned to the different areas within parks. All that is said, that they were not shutting the door on people coming to talk to them on specific issues, parks related. This group was heavily focused on sustainable funding for parks and finding alternatives to levies, and really addressing the capital maintenance backlog. And so that's something that's been in front of District 1 and 4 counselors, I will just note. And I think it's important to start having more direct conversations with them about the levy itself. And so that's something we're working on developing as well in partnership with the city of like, what are the key talking points around the levy? I saw some of that put together in the letter from that Casey, Chris, and Corbin put together. So there's just a lot of, I think, strategic communications around the levy as well as capital maintenance and both of those together. And I will just say there are conversations happening that we realize we need to address. And it's one of the reasons I think that possibly a delay till November, although it complicates the budget piece, will hopefully lead to a successful levy campaign versus this May. So that was a lot, but there's kind of, as things are changing quickly, but now we kind of have a roadmap of where to go through July.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Any questions from the board? Any comments? I have a comment. I have a comment. Because the board is situated as the public forum for park issues and discussions, I'm quite curious, especially with the restructuring of the government and understanding that council members are not commissioners anymore and don't have a direct role in how Parks and Recreation is ran. How can we be more in conversation to these groups so we're not having 50 different conversations with people coming to the council versus using the board as a resource to have these discussions and hear these different issues? So it's not a question or a statement necessarily for you to answer, Jessica, but it's something that I would like the board to think about. Because if we're having all these different conversations and folks don't know that we're here to actually do this work, what do we need to do? What type of conversation, what type of information do we need to get out as a board so we can be used as a resource during this important time? So Ann, go ahead.
It's interesting. This is just looking back, based on what you said. As a board, when we presented the testimony for the PGE situation, Harborton location, there were 2 or 3 other parks staff were actually having their 3 minutes. And I had my a little bit more than 2 minutes. And I found that actually very compelling, be able to have the voice, be able to represent parks or the advisory board. And for, although that was kind of the planning issue, it's not the city council, but is there a way that we can utilize that kind of forum at city council and to be able to show up and be heard rather than maybe send letters? I mean, in addition to send letters or have some FaceTime from time to time as a board, show up at city council meetings, not just a land use or other smaller.
I think those are opportunities. Director Long, do you want to speak to that?
I was just gonna add, I know that at the last board meeting, I talked about the committees that were just being stood up, and so the first meeting of the city council committees was this past Monday. They're meeting fairly frequently, every other week for a couple of hours each time. You may note, and I had a conversation with council president today, and she jokingly, well, she apologized for parks being applicable to 5 of the committees. And I was like, well, we are many things to many people. So it was sort of a joke, but the fact is that we do show up and our work will show up in multiple committees. So I think that it'd be really, you might want to think about that platform for introducing the board. And you can online submit an idea to go to that committee. So you don't have to go through me or, through the council president. The chairs of those committees choose their topics. And I think that would be a great way to introduce the board and what they do, and that your platform and a venue, maybe it's the first stop, so.
Yeah, and we had a conversation about this, Director Long, and from the work that I've done in another city as a park commissioner, city council folks would refer community members to our commission first to establish a chain of command, so folks are not jumping over park staff, opportunities for community members to get into having conversation about park issues. And I would love for there to be a process established, not that council can't listen to park issues, but to refer anybody with the park issues or park ideas, because things that community members want to do, like the good stuff,
Like bike polo.
like bike polo.
They did not come and complain.
Right.
Right.
They came with ideas and they came to enjoy, right? We always, unfortunately, we tend to talk about tragedy of the commons and degradation of but there's also tragedy, there's also comedy of the commons, where you're welcoming people in to really enjoy these spaces. And I would love for us to also hold that space for us to talk about those issues. So maybe with our letters, as we go out to talk to council folks, to really, communicate, to use this as a resource, to direct community members to us and think about a process. So we can actually be the voice, we can be the mic for community needs and maybe get some things solved before it needs to get to council. That's something to think about as we think about our work as a board during this government transition and change. So I'll leave it there. If there's anything folks want to say, it looks like we have some. Jessica, go ahead.
Yeah, I really love what you're saying there, and I agree that I feel like the first step for the Parks Board, kind of going back to what I was saying about Parks Foundation too, is to introduce yourself to these councils. And it sounds like by way of these committees could be a great way, but that's the first step. And this is what having the levy referral postponed a bit gives everybody a chance to build a relationship before just diving in for an ask. And I think it's an opportunity to quickly turn into that and to say, this is who we are. And also, all of these counselors are getting probably very direct community asks all the time about parks related things. And so it's a very relevant thing to talk to them about, in the sense of introducing who you are. And here's this platform for community members to have access to parks leadership, to be able to have this conversation, to have comments as opposed to just meeting with their counselor. So I guess I just really support that process, and that everything that I've heard on even just these tours, so from the outside, is that they want that. They want to be having, people come present to these committees. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Any other thoughts or comments from the board? Thank you. All right, so thank you so much, Jessica.
Just a note, I put
Yes.
in the chat, if people want to follow what's happening at the committee meetings, the link is there.
Wonderful, thank you. So moving to service area equity tools, if we have Brett and is that Marty that's presenting?
Yes.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Brett Horner, I'm the Parks Planning Manager. And I have Marty Stockton, my senior planner, here. We're gonna do a short presentation on hopefully some refinements and improvements to our equity tool that we use. So my group does the annual capital growth process with committees, and we make recommendations at the end of the process for investing in new parks, new facilities with our limited dollars. So one of the things that's really important about that is the equity lens that we use. And it's was developed about 10 years ago. It's fairly coarse and unrefined, I would say, and we're trying to improve it. So over the last year or so, we have been working with our equity team. And we're working very closely with Amanda right now on upgrading our equity tool. So today's presentation is going to walk you through some of that. It's very much a draft, so nothing has been adopted or accepted yet. We'd love to get your thoughts and input on it tonight. We had this at the working group, the land use working group, 2 weeks ago, and I think they all felt that it would be great to have the full board hear it and see it and would be interested in it. So we're happy to be here. So we're just gonna, let's go to the next slide. So just a quick kind of rundown of the slideshow. I talked a little bit about the capital growth process, and it's a fairly lengthy process that starts kind of in September and then rolls into the budget preparation into the spring. About now is when decisions are being made. There is not a lot of available funding to program this go around. So so we're not having our normal process. But next year, we hope to have this equity improvement in place so that we're using it to make decisions and make better decisions on our capital growth. So let's go to the next slide. This is just a separation of, so what my team does is just the new things, the expanded capacity projects. They're anything over 10,000. They could be new playgrounds, it could be entire new parks. So there's kind of a big range of assets that it ends up being. There's also the major maintenance process, which my team doesn't manage. That's done by Chris Silkey and the asset management group. It also uses the same equity lens, but looks at different things in terms of like if something fails, what does that mean? And then what's the likelihood of something failing? So a little different process. And then Lauren, my supervisor, wanted us to include, we also have a little bit of funding every year that we hold back in case of an emergency, like a trail that might get damaged and needs immediate repair. We have a little bit of funding to do that, so that's emergency maintenance. Slide. So again, here's just a summary of what each of the growth or major maintenance process uses. So there's an equity score, we'll get to that in a minute. There's what we call the service variety score. This is a look at how many things might be in a particular geography. So if you live near, say, 3 parks, you get a low score because you've got a lot of things easy to walk to. If you live in an area of the city where there's very few parks or very few things, you get a high score on the service variety. So it's a look at what we've already got in a particular geography. We also look at the number of households a new project may serve. So we just take account of how many folks are living around a particular part of the city where we might be thinking of making an investment. And then the major maintenance, I won't go through, but 4 and 5 is what major maintenance uses in their decision process. Let's go to the next slide. So here's how we give a score to every project on our capital list. We give an equity score of 1 to 5. And we'll get to that, how we figure that in a minute. We also give a 1 to 5 score on that service variety. So again, if you've got a lot of things near your home, you get a lower score. If you've got very few things, you get a high score there. And then households are broken down by how many households. If it serves a ton of households, like in Central City, it's gonna get a 5, it's serving a lot of folks. If it's in an area that's fairly undeveloped, you get a low score because it serves fewer people. It ends up being a weird number, so we actually multiply those 3. And 125 is the maximum. That's a very rare score. I would say we've only got maybe even 3 or 4 projects that get a 5 in each of those categories. Typically, a high score is around 60, 45 is pretty high. We got a lot of in that range. So we're also, we'll get to it in a minute, but we're also looking at rescoring that a little differently to make a little bit more sense, like a 1 to 100 score instead of. Next slide. So here's how we factor equity right now in our capital growth. We look at BIPOC households, so a percentage. If it's above the citywide average, it gets a pretty high score. If it's at the citywide average, it kind of gets a middle score. If it's lower than the citywide average, it's going to get a 1 or 2. And then we also factor in youth. So if there's young folks, kids living in a particular geography, it'll get a high score. If there's very few young folks living in the area, it gets a low score.
Can I add something here?
Yeah.
So one thing, households with BIPOC individuals, one of the issues that we have right now is that, so on a citywide, it's 33% of our households are made up with BIPOC individuals. But if you get a 32%, then you would get a 0. And so there's a binary aspect to the way that we score this right now. Now, if you have a 32% in a geography of BIPOC households, that's pretty darn good. But it would get a 0 in the way that we score it. So that's something that we are acknowledging about the way that we currently score it.
This is something you can actually
We want to
modify.
we
or
want to do more of a
That's what
grade.
we're working on right now.
Yeah, we're wanting to do more of a gradation.
A range.
Yeah.
So, and then the third factor, we look at, again, this is a very coarse tool right now. We only look at the percentage of households that are actually at or below poverty level, which is super low. So we're starting to look at upping that a little bit so that we're looking at not just very low income, but maybe low to very low income. So we'll get to that in a minute, how we look at that. It's, percentage of median family income. There's different ways to use that.
Question.
Mhm.
Percentage for people under 18. I can see parks can serve different age group at different kind of capacity. What's the significance of that particular focus?
Well, I think when it was developed, again, it was done very much internal to the Bureau. It wasn't a public process. It wasn't even, I don't think, we didn't involve the Parks Board and others in developing it. And I think the focus is like youth was to be prioritized, just because it's good to have an easy walk for youth, to playgrounds. In our polling, we always find that playgrounds are always rated very highly and desired over other assets. So it was just something that we incorporated at that time. We are gonna be looking at the other end of the spectrum, so we're adding
Elderly,
seniors.
like seniors,
So we'll get to that in a minute. And
This
that's
is what it currently is, then they're
Yeah,
gonna
this
get
is
to
the
what,
current-
yeah.
current process.
Just to remind the board, thank you for your questions, Swin, but we want to save them to the end because we will easily not get to the end. We're gonna ask a whole bunch of questions.
Okay.
So do put down your questions and maybe the page number if you need to go back to a particular slide. But thank you, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Let's go to the next slide. And then, so the way we make recommendations for funding is really more of an art than a science. So we don't just follow the numbers and the score. We also look at other factors that may come into play. We may have a partnership with the Portland Parks Foundation. Or we may have, when we used to have commissioner, there might be a commissioner priority that we incorporate and bump up in terms of priority. We might have projects that generate revenue, and that's a positive for us. So there's other things that we look at as part of the yearly process. Let's go to the next slide. We wanted to show this. This is a heat map showing Park Service currently. And it was really to show there's inequity, right? So the orange areas, the yellow and orange areas are parts of town where there's actually quite a few walkable to park assets, playgrounds, sports fields, dog off leash areas, all the things that we count in terms of assets. The blue are areas where we might not have any park, or we may not have any playground, or we might not have anything that people can walk to. And then the areas that aren't colored are industrial areas or where people are not living. So that's why they're golf courses or areas where there's not people living. So the idea is use the equity tool to kind of even that color out so that we get a more even distribution to folks wherever they live. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things that's really important in using the equity tool is always assessing how you're doing. So this is a chart showing over the years how we've done. Again, we adopted this tool in about 2015. So you can see it we think it helped ramp up our investments in these priority equity areas since we developed the tool. And hopefully with our new tool, once we get it in place, we'll be even to make even better progress on this. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm gonna hand it over to Marty. Marty's been leading the group that's been looking at what should we factor in for equity, because there's a lot of research in this area now that wasn't here 10 years ago. And so we looked at a number of factors, and I'll hand it over to Marty.
Sure. So when we started about a year to 18 months ago, not only were we thinking about updates to the equity metrics, but we were also thinking about the service variety as well as the household, as well as, maybe we needed to add a fourth circle to kind of our scoring. So we kind of started out pretty broad. And here's just a general list of both kind of people or demographic metrics that we considered, as well as more of our place-based metrics as well. And so just acknowledging that, you know, there's the people and there's the place, and the place may not necessarily fit within the equity circle, but we did think very broadly, and maybe there's a fourth circle that we needed to add to the calculation. So that's what we have here. Next slide. Additionally, we were looking at what other city bureaus used for their equity tools. And just acknowledging that the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services, they actually use a CDC equity tool, but Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, which is the middle column, as well as Portland Bureau of Transportation, the column on the right, they have customized equity tools. So again, Parks and Rec, equity tools since about 2015, people of color, youth, households that are below the poverty status. And when we talk about the poverty status, just to kind of put that into context, that would be a family of four making about $33,000 a year gross for that household. So that's just kind of the dollar amount for the poverty level. Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, this is actually an older list of the equity metrics that were established by Dr. Lisa Bates in partnership with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability in about 2018. So some interesting things that have been included and omitted from their update, which happened about 2 years ago, is Bureau of Planning and Sustainability no longer includes renters because renters do not necessarily note vulnerability. Renters make up the full spectrum of income. So that has been taken off their list. Communities of color, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability now does a two-pronged approach. So they look at communities of color, give that a score, and then they look separately at households that have Black and Indigenous individuals. So, and then they give that a score. So just acknowledging that BPS has a two-pronged approach. And then they've kept, adults with without a 4-year degree, and then the income has changed. And so instead of having low income below an 80% median family income, they're looking at more of a household vulnerability matched with the number of individuals in the household. So that's what BPS is using. And then PBOT, race, ethnicity, income, limited English proficiency, which is a metric that is not in the other two bureaus. And then they also have project-specific demographics and data. So with every project that they are undertaking, they're looking at very site-specific data as well, not just kind of the citywide data. I will also say that what's unique about Portland Parks and Rec is that we look at the census block level, which is a very zoomed in scale, a very fine grained scale, whereas Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and PBOT look at the tract level, which is more roughly about the size, if you're on the east side of the river, about a neighborhood association is about a tract level, whereas if you are downtown, a block level, it's a much more zoomed in, but it's based on number of people is how the census does it. Next slide. So what we're excited to kind of put forward today is just kind of where we're at specifically with the equity score. And again, that's the first circle. and just get your feedback and thoughts, and this is actually a really good time in our project to do a touch point with you all. So what we're thinking at this time is that we would have, and this is a question actually to the board, whether or not we're ready to do a two-pronged approach to race and ethnicity, where we would have BIPOC households, the umbrella approach to BIPOC, but then also have a separate where we would have Black and Indigenous households as well, question. Or whether or not we would just do BIPOC and do on the scoring as 0 to 4. So I guess that's kind of one of the questions we'd like to put forward. And before, I'm gonna just go through this and then we can discuss it as a group. So youth, we keep that. We're adding households with seniors, those with 65 and older. And then we actually had a breakthrough on the income. So the income, we knew that we wanted to move beyond just the poverty level, because the poverty level is, as the Housing Bureau describes it, it's extreme low income. We're wanting to include extreme low income, but we're also wanting to expand it to include low income households as well. And we've been struggling with, we know that we want to move beyond 30% median family income to roughly about 60-ish% median family income. But I think what we landed on today, and again, get some feedback from you all, is we're thinking about landing at 50% median family income. And the reason being is that the Housing Bureau has identified that for a family of 4 would be about 59,000 for a family of 4. And that matches up pretty beautifully with what qualifies for WIC at a statewide level. And that would be at a statewide level, which obviously cost of living is different across the state. But at a statewide level, it would be a family of 4 at 57,000. And so again, it's slightly higher. In Portland, it would be 59. So we were very excited about that aha moment today. And then the total would be 0 to 10. So that's how we're thinking of it. Okay, I'm gonna pause and see if there's any initial reactions or feedback.
So for the 2 categories,
Could you, in the future, just
Oh,
make
yeah,
sure
I'm
you're
sorry.
bringing it up?
Got
Yeah,
carried away.
Go ahead.
you have BIPOC and then Black. I mean, would you have Latino? I mean, are you thinking of breaking it down to that level, or?
So
You're just-
so the BIPOC would be, it would be all communities of color.
Right.
And we would keep that. And then and so we could either do 0 to 4 and just do that. Or we could do all communities of color 0 to 2 and do the 2-pronged approach, and then further focus or score households that have Black and Indigenous populations only.
Why? Well, and that's what I mean. It's because you start thinking, well, why don't you have Latino and Asians? I mean, that seems a little odd.
So we would in the BIPOC. So
I think the question is why pull out just Black and
Black and
Indigenous?
Indigenous, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This seems a little odd.
Yeah, so I think, and this is some thinking that has, really come out of the pandemic, as well as the racial justice awakening, reckoning, and just acknowledgement of not only of the unique histories that Black and Indigenous populations have in the United States, but also acknowledging that the demographics, not the demographics, the equity gaps experienced by those populations much more significantly than other populations within the BIPOC umbrella. So there's this acknowledgement.
Some of that has to do with they're not able to connect to economies outside the United States because they're of the United States, which is different than other immigrant communities. Not to say we have long generational ties of Asian and Latinx within the United States, particularly on the West Coast. But the historical tragedy of those particular groups are being upheld in this, which I do appreciate, but I think there needs to be some explanation behind that as well. If I can have a follow-up question, just maybe something to ground us. How are you defining equity? Because that word gets used and leveraged a lot. And what it ends up being is equality, as in people getting the same things, not necessarily getting the resources that they need. So when we're calling this an equity tool, how are we defining equity? Because that doesn't necessarily mean that all neighborhoods get the same thing.
Right.
So we're following the definition that's in Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. So what we're doing here is we don't want to redefine equity, but we're expressing it in this new chart to get at the goal of how we've defined equity.
The implementation of.
Yeah, so.
Just also a quick, can we get the folks?
Yes.
Just in case they have questions so we can see.
And we do have one more slide that I just wanna
Please go ahead, yeah.
do a summary on. That's the next slide, and then we can come back to that one. But so this would be the new way that we come up with a score. So we would, this is a previous version. It shouldn't be a times, it should be a plus for the 3. But so an equity plus service variety plus households. Equity is now a 0 to 10, so it's been double weighted compared to the other 2. That's what's changed here. And then it's gonna be additive instead of multiplied. So you can get up to 20 points. And then what we'll do is we'll do a conversion and you'll get that number expressed as a 1 to 100 score. So it's a little bit easier to understand, like, okay, this project is meeting 77% of our, what we were trying to accomplish, or this one does 87, or this one does 50, so that we can compare them a little bit better. So this would be the new method if everyone,
And what I like about this is it's really elevating people.
It's elevating the demographics, not just the counting of the households and then the park assets that are out there. So we can go back to that previous slide if people have questions about that. I think this weighting of the first 2 rows is something that takes some thought, and we probably do need to explain it a little better of where it came from and the reasoning behind it, because this is where we've had a lot of discussion internally is people understanding it first and then coming to the conclusion of, yes, it makes sense, or they don't agree with it, so.
If I can jump in with one more. So I like using Ribon Peluso's theory of access as the ability to benefit from things, which a lot of times we talk about proximity to particular resources. And I'm not seeing an access index, something to consider, because even though you might remove renters and people can rent houses, so they will have access to backyards. But if we're thinking about renters in connection to apartments or thinking about ownership in connection to condos, those people are less likely to have access to green space at home. And so is there a sort of geographical index that speaks to where there might be an over inundation of condos and renters with very limited green spaces in this?
So 2 thoughts about that. So if you can go to the last slide. I'm sorry, yes, right there. So the household right here, so right now, it's just pure population numbers. And, And so if there's a higher number, you get a higher score. If it's a lower number, you get a lower score. What it doesn't include right now is it doesn't include zoning capacity. And so the potential for there to be significant growth in a geography. And so that is kind of on our phase 2 or phase 3 list of wanting to do kind of further updates to this. Additionally, I had talked about adding potentially a 4th circle that would get at more of the place-based or the geography or basically the quality of life in in an area. And so on that very first slide that I was referring to where we did have one that had zoning patterns, single dwelling zoning versus multi-dwelling zoning. There was there was a whole public health section. There was a whole section that was environment that had to do with urban heat islands. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones on there, but so there was a whole list of potential metrics that we could use in an index or a circle to add to this at a future phase. So very much interested in that, but not wanting to dilute the pure demographic bubble with more of a geographic existing conditions.
Pollute or I almost feels like a
dilute.
Okay, I thought you said pollute. I was like,
No.
that's
Dilute.
an interesting turn of phrase. Okay, thank you.
If I could just point out that Chris and Ally both have their hands up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Chris, and then Ally.
Thank you. Can we go back to the slide before this? I think I want to give insight into the question that you asked to give more detail. I think what I'm thinking about to even know if this gets to the intended impact is how this would be applied. So for me, I think in order to give more valuable feedback on whether it should be one category that's 0 to 4 versus the 2 split out, is to see how this is applied to a specific defined service area, to see if there's any unintended consequences of the application and where there's maybe like a diversity population overlay for a certain area. I think it's hard for me to talk more about what my recommendation would be or an insight without seeing an example here.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, because we did mean to mention that in this slideshow. Is we are going to test this out so that we can see what a particular park score is with the current method. And then if we move to this, how it might change. So we're definitely going to get there with Olivia Lau as our GIS guru, who's going to run about 8 to 10 test cases across the city just to see how it sorts out. And then we'll have a little bit better handle. I think you're right on here about whether this makes sense. And then we can actually maybe even suss out, whether it's a 0 to 4 or it's these two 0 to 2s, how that may change things.
And just on that, I would be curious if once we have those, I guess, pilots or examples, if there would be interest for us to come back and kind of walk through those and have a conversation. So
It looks like it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for offering.
Ally's up next.
Go ahead, Ally.
Yeah, I have 3 questions. One was very similar to Chris. Well, it's just, have you played with it yet? And does it actually make a meaningful difference? Or is it just going to echo the same results and it's more sort of in name only? So that's, I'm curious how it turns out. My other questions, when you look at park assets and what is around a neighborhood or an area, do all park assets have equal weight? So does a ballpark have the same weight as a Mount Tabor where you have real nature access? So when you think of, or how does a community center rate? So basically wondering how you for me, it comes down to nature access, because to me, going to a ballpark is not nature access. That's having park access, but it's not actually being able to get into nature. So how do you all weigh all of those things together, or is everything given equal value?
So we have 13 defined assets, and again, it's a list of playgrounds, sports fields, just what you mentioned. There are other ones that we haven't incorporated yet, just because like new things like futsal, disc golf, and some other, and pickleball have not been factored in yet. But they're equally weighted in terms of they're counted as a 1. And so if you have a playground and you have a sports field in your park only, let's say, that's a 2. So if you went back to that chart that we had, the 0 to 13 heat map, it would show up as a 2. If you have 3 playgrounds in your half mile, we only count 1 for playgrounds. We don't count 3 for playgrounds. So that's how it kind of sorts out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but is nature access one of those pieces?
It is, yes.
Okay, it's one of those points, but it would be up against, so you're like recreation, you could score up a whole lot of points where genuine nature access would still only get 1 point. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I would question that and push back on that to say that having a variety of recreation is really important, but that, you know, to have 7 points go to something and still have not that community not have real nature access, to me is a big problem. So I would just wonder about that weighting and call attention to that. My other question is, I noticed none of the bureaus did it, where disability isn't mentioned, and I'm guessing that y'all are relying on income and over 65 to sort of work as a catch-all, or is it because there isn't data in the census and whatnot for you to be able to look at that holistically?
So it's both. So yes and yes to your question. The issue with disability as far as the metrics is it's at the track level, and Parks and Rec is at a finer grain, and we're at the block level. And so just the data isn't at the block level at a reliable level.
Okay.
I think we hope to get there someday. This was something that we really wanted to factor in, but it was just the data doesn't give us enough certainty about using it in that way.
The margin of error is problematic.
It's at the track level basically, and it's very difficult to parse out. But it is something we want to get to. And we have found that age is a close proxy for disability. So at the older end of the spectrum, you tend to have more people with disabilities. But you know, we all know the disabilities at every age group.
And I would add too that, you know, getting back to Brett's comment about this is not just a science, it's also an art. When we're talking about the difference between investing limited capital dollars in Park A or Park B, there is a lot of qualitative just knowledge that we're bringing into that conversation to make a determination of which park to invest in. And so, for example, if we're investing or having a conversation about a park where we know that there's a lot of mobile home parks in the vicinity, and we know that mobile home parks have a higher percentage of people experiencing disability, that is part of the conversation. That's part of the art in making a decision.
And then would nature, like genuine nature access, also be part of that art piece where it's like, okay, well, they have 8 fields, but they don't have any like trails or ability to get into nature more authentically? Would that be part of the art piece because it's not captured in the points?
I would say at that point, it would probably be more of us going to the community and asking the community what their preference is for what amenities they would desire.
Yeah, we could share with you the mapping of nature access. So if if you look at it, that heat map that we did one just for natural area access. And it shows you where the gaps are. And what we're trying to do with particularly with the nature patch program is to convert areas of developed parks into nature patches in these pocket areas where we won't be able to like build a new nature experience. We would put it in to an existing park rather than try to recreate a new natural area where we just don't have the land. And Irvington is a good test case for this because there's other than Irving Park, there is a big park service gap and a nature gap in that area, but we've put a nature patch in at Irving Park so that people have a little bit of access. It's not to replace natural area service, it's to at least give people some ability to experience nature in a different way than you would in a natural area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ally. And just to remind everybody, we have 2 minutes before we'll have to turn over to public comment, and then if there isn't, we'll move forward. Any other questions? Lynn, go ahead.
Fascinating effort here. I really appreciate. I wonder, I know we can always slice and dice into bits and pieces and all, but it will be important to recognize what is, I appreciate what Ali was talking about, nature, the experience with nature. It's not just a tree right there and you just stand underneath it, play, enjoy and all. But maybe this is where when the multi bureau is trying to be able to have that conversation, some neighborhoods don't even have sidewalks. And to go to an area that and with like grandma with a walker and the baby with a stroller, the accessibility, walking is always good if you can walk. To take a bus to go to a park, it's just a little bit like, it's better than nothing. And so I'm hoping the kind of data you collect eventually can really look at Portland as places where we start to have quality. Neighborhood's quality has a lot to do with how do you get from point A to point B and be able to enjoy that path. And this doesn't really get to that because it's more about let's plop this in, plop that in. But it's how to blend in with the community is it's harder to do, but it has to do with several other bureaus to say planning, T-BOT, all that.
There are citywide planning documents that actually speak to that. Is it 2035?
The 2035, the comp plan.
It's a comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and this is Marty's favorite issue because she tried to come up with some way to factor that in.
Yeah.
But it proved to be very unwieldy in terms of trying to get data around it. That's
Really quickly, Marty, before you start, I just need to ask, is there anybody here for public comment?
Not that I can know. I think Joey went down to check.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Marty. You have the
And
floor.
I'm guessing little Horner is not.
Yeah, this is Adrian, my son, and he's been very quiet. He's been good.
So just tip of the iceberg on this, one of the beautiful things about doing a park development or redevelopment is typically we include park frontage improvements, ADA improvements. And so we, as a Parks Bureau, that is some of the investment that we do directly when we're developing a park. Now, when we have the opportunity, we do a lot of coordination with our other service bureaus. So a perfect example right now is I'm working on a collaboration with Bureau of Environmental Services in Portland Bureau of Transportation on improvements at Dunaway Park because of a major sewer trunk line replacement that basically serves OHSU right now. And we're advocating for frontage improvements along Sam Jackson. And I am just so trying to make a nexus to get frontage improvements from Sam Jackson all the way to the Markham Nature trailhead. Because we have, you know, lots of park users in the neighborhood, OHSU, St. Mary's Academy, that are running up an unimproved road to get to the trails to do running. And it's a safety issue. So there's a lot of collaboration that we do on a project-specific basis. That could be one of the opportunities if we are within the public works service area. There could be even, you know, that's an opportunity to do even more alignment when we're doing more, I would say, community development as multi bureaus working together. So it's exciting. It's my favorite thing.
Thank you. Is there anybody with any questions? So I guess one of my concerns with the equity tool, because you said it, the scale is at the block level, right? But we need to think about equity and access at the park systems level as well. And so, Sue, and thank you for bringing up, you know, sidewalks and transportation, and how is that being captured? Because we're not gonna be able to have a Washington Park in Woodlawn. We're not gonna have a Washington Park in, you know, Unthank Park, because there's, unless something drastically happens, that's not gonna be possible in those areas. But that doesn't preclude us from having access through other means, through PBOT or, you know, this potential shuttle. When you're thinking about equity, how are you thinking of beyond the neighborhood level? I think the neighborhood level is important, but that's not the only scale we should be looking at. Or we're not looking.
Well,
at
I
it?
think the reason that we use this is we've gotta make choices every year, right, on where we spend our dollars. And so we're really trying with this improvement to get a much finer grain on it so that we're really putting our dollars where they're gonna make the best and most beneficial impact based on our goals of who we're trying to serve. At the citywide level, I'm not sure how that comes together. I mean, I think if you go back to the heat map that we did, you see that inequity. And so the tool is hopefully getting us to where we're starting to even that out more. It's gonna be, you know, a decades long process to get there. It just takes a lot of time.
My only concern is that this becomes a checkbox situation. And that we will be providing, you know, neighborhoods that are gonna be changing with different folks, especially if we're thinking about gentrification or what have you. And that's the other thing to think about is that what are the safety measures when development dollars go into particular neighborhoods? Is that going to cause a green gentrification or maybe even a blue gentrification if we're thinking about pools or what have you? And how that could upend the equity goals when investing in these areas. So what are the thoughts on that as well?
I know with the North Portland Aquatic Center, it was definitely used as a case study with Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to kind of look at, you know, whether or not there were you know, risk for gentrification because of the investment. You know, I was not intimately involved in that, and so I can't really speak at it at the level that you would be interested in, but I know that there are groups that come together, multi-bureau representation to have those conversations. You know, I know that at a geographic level, there's been a lot of focus on East Portland and right now, specifically the 82nd Avenue corridor with the investments that are being considered along 82nd. And that really has to be a multi-bureau conversation and really a multi-agency conversation as well. And typically it's those larger projects that have that multi-bureau kind of analysis. I know with the Division Transit, Division Rapid, yes, thank you. It's those transportation projects have done a better job to put some of the safeguards with making sure there's money allocated to affordable housing, making sure that there's money allocated to workforce development, et cetera. I think that that is a further conversation that we need to have within Parks and Rec as far as what kind of level of investment trigger needed other bureau coordination to put those safeguards in place.
I have one more last question, but I'm gonna open up the floor to the board if there's any other questions. My question is, what is the indicators of success? What would you be putting this model against to say, okay, we did capture this correctly? What are the models that you're looking at? Is it like the park score from the Trust for Public Land? Like what other agencies are you gonna be in comparison with to say that you've gotten this tool fine-tuned and honed?
Well, I think long-term, we wanna monitor this heat map. So, 10 years from now, hopefully we get a better picture of if this orange and yellow is more evenly spread. So that east is picking up more of what north has and southwest has. To me, that's the ultimate goal, is to even that middle color, that yellow, orange, so that everyone has a more equitable park service, because right now it's just uneven. And I think what we're trying to do year by year is really put those investment dollars where they're gonna make the most immediate impact. So that's why we wanted to refine the tool, and so that we're really targeting those specific communities to get those gaps. So, you have these gaps, and then within the gaps, you have a community. And what we're trying to do with the tool is figure out which of those communities that are in the gaps we should go to first with our dollars.
Okay, and if you have several communities that are dealing with the same sort of scores, then how do you decide who gets the investment?
So that's where our process comes in, and we have committees that look at it. People raise things like, oh, well, there's 2 schools near this site and it's got some fields on it. Maybe you need to factor that in. Or there's a partner that's at the table that wants to help fundraise for it. So there's these other things that we had on that one slide of the other factors, again, more of an art than the science, but we start with the score.
Okay.
And then we work back from that on.
So phase 1 and then community voice. Thank you so
Did you
much.
say community voice?
Yes. What were you thinking?
That's what I'm like to hear.
All right, we are at what is that, 6:56? We're almost done. Any other comments, questions, or announcements? Director Lund?
For those of you who are on the big screen, I don't want you to feel too jealous, but everyone who joined us in the room got their new name badges.
Nice.
With very cool.
Very cool.
Michelle showing it off.
I love the ferns.
So hopefully that
With
will motivate
lanyards?
you to
Yes.
come in person next month. Just saying.
Come in person, I will give these to you.
I want to thank Brett and Marty. Thank you so much for presenting, and we're
Thank
looking
you.
forward to having you back.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll plan to come back when we get really close to refining, getting it fully refined.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you wanted to
And thank you,
bring
Adrian.
some loaded questions with you for us to think about, so we'll be prepared for the next presentation.
So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 6:57. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you.
See everyone.
It took a little doing, but it's now.